the time.
Forever? Tangent. Hold.
Halt.
Hashtag always MGM.
You are approaching the unloading area.
Calm down. AK haters.
But what if it could?
Behold the majesty of the Sistine ceiling.
For the kids.
A salute to all theme parks, but mostly Walt Disney World.
What a cute ending.
Aloha and
Don't Dillo it.
This is Theme Park Thursday with Dillo's Diz. She is Jen.
Hello.
And I am Frank, and on this episode, once in a while we get a little excited because we branch out a little bit into entertainers and authors, and sometimes both. So we have one of those episodes today, and we're a little excited.
I know. We're kicking off 2024 in a good way. Last year, we had some months where we couldn't have a lot of guests, so it's great to kind of be back in it. So I'm excited.
I just mentioned before we bring in our guests, there is a change in the program officially, as 7-year-old A will now be referred to on the podcast heretofore as the 8-year-old.
That's right. So we will now have the 9-year-old, the 8-year-old, and the 7-year-old. So
Yes.
change your programs, make your adjustments.
And eventually we have to talk about those code names you've been using. But we'll
yes.
get to that. We don't have time. We always say that. Not right now. But, we love good stories, do we not,
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And we love ourselves some Walt Disney World entertainers, do we not, Jen?
Yes, we do.
So in the spirit of that and bringing those two things together, we have a fantastic author with us today. I have the book right here, Tell Your Story, Tools to Take You from a Tweet to a TED Talk. There was a lot of alliteration there, and I was worried about my Long Island accent. So let's bring her right in and say hello to Alice Fairfax. Alice, hello.
Hello, Frank and Jen. I love that you have the book. That's awesome.
Oh no, I've been, I love myself. Anything to craft a story that, and especially that uses tools of, just basic, storytelling hooks and tropes. I get really excited for it. So anytime I see a book like that come along, I have to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
And I think that's kind of what why we even did this podcast is because we grew up going to Disney. We grew up loving all the things, and we would sometimes just tell random stories to friends and family and entertaining things. And why don't we sell some of those on a podcast? And here we are. So we love a good story, and I think maybe you have a couple to tell. I don't know.
Just a few, and those are just the ones in the book. That is one of the ways that I set up the book is that every chapter starts with a story, and so it's a story that then we kind of unpack the tricks and the systems and the tools that are in that story. But many of them are Disney stories. A couple of them are ridiculous family stories.
But they all have to do with storytelling, and that's what I love. And you mentioned in the book, that theater actor kind of mentality and how that shifted into, focusing on the audience and really developing your craft for storytelling. But I really want to kind of just lay the foundation here from the theme park side, and maybe you can just give a little exposition, but not too much because I've read the book and I know how that goes. That your background with the theme parks in Central Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I went to high school and college here in Central Florida area, and I knew that it was going to be drama. And I went to theater major at Rollins College in Winter Park. And it was so long ago that when I mentioned my graduation year to a group of young alums, one of them went, I said the year. But for the sake of this podcast, I'll tell you years, because I think you guys will actually know better than my memory can serve about where the theme parks were at. Mm-hmm. So I graduated from college in 1988. And I think that there really wasn't
Now you had the Magic Kingdom and Epcot. You had
Epcot.
both studios on the horizon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, but they weren't here yet, and there weren't a lot of jobs for actors. I was a merchandise hostess when I was in high school, like for my summer job, and the Magic Kingdom existed, and Epcot had just opened because on our Traditions Day we went into Epcot and we were like, oh my gosh, this was when you guys. Maybe even you remember this. Remember when Epcot opened and the custodial cast members were on inline skates?
Oh, a little bit, but
Yeah.
now that you say that, yes, sparked, yeah.
It was funky. It was futuristic. So it was really just starting. It was a lot of singing and dancing people, but there weren't actors really. And so when I graduated, it was really, okay, I got to figure out where I'm going to be, what I'm going to do. Tried New York because I knew it was going to be theater, not really film. And I just, I loved New York, but my experience was that I was waiting in lines, waiting to audition.
Right.
Whereas back here at home, I was doing stuff, wasn't as well paid, and there weren't a lot of theaters in town, but I started building theaters. I started working with different theater troupes and building theaters. And one of those troupes was SAC Theater, and they were performing out at Epcot at the time. But then pretty quickly in 1990, studios started to come on board. Universal Studios opened, and that had a lot of acting roles, a lot of comedians, the Horror Makeup Show, Murder, She Wrote show, a lot of the Ghostbusters. There was a lot of different actor shows. And the same thing happened at MGM Studios, #always.
Well,
We already love you, Alice. We love you.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Always. MGM Studios. So Disney's MGM Studios, it had these Streetmosphere characters, right? And then there were a lot of different acting shows going on. And so then that started to develop in other parks as well around Disney. So suddenly there were all these actors flooding Central Florida. All of these people coming down here that were real character actors, real comedians like me. They weren't, pretty princesses, which I never was. I was never going to be Cinderella. I was always going to be the fairy godmother since the time I was 18. Never going to be Cinderella, ever. So that's really when it started for me in 1990, was I started auditioning for the theme parks. And that really felt right to me. I think it kind of got a bad rap, like, oh, you're a theme park actor, you're not a real actor. But for me, the concept of rehearsing for weeks, months, sometimes some people even rehearse for there was one group that was doing like a 10-month rehearsal. I wanted to poke my eyes out.
Yeah.
But when you do theme park acting, you reherse for, a week would be long.
Right.
Because you're there for an 8-hour day. You rehearse without the audience. You need to get the audience. You need to get in front of an audience as soon as possible because you're incorporating the audience.
Yeah.
So then you rehearse maybe 2-3 days, and then you just start getting in front of an audience. But then you're performing. At Universal, I performed 13 shows a day at Murder, She Wrote. Started at Disney, 5 shows a day. Hollywood Holiday Storytellers, I was 8 shows a day. So it was just performing. And so that's one of the things that I really, really loved about it. That was a better difference for me than regional theater or touring shows. It was different every time. You were out there with the audience, engaging with them. And there just wasn't a lot of what my friend Tommy used to call GRT, green room time. Just not a lot of hanging around backstage doing nothing.
It's interesting that that the perception was like, oh, you're a theme park actor or whatever. Meanwhile, it had such an effect on our lives to watch all the theme park actors. Like, it was the coolest thing to see and watch and experience. And like you're saying, to me, it's almost even more, it's a bigger deal, and there's more work behind it because you're rehearsing and then you're getting out there and like, let's see how all this goes, and it's a quicker turnaround. So, but
That makes
I
me
think
want to hug you.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times, like me and friends of mine, we've been to somebody's house for the first time that we're just meeting, a business partner, and there on the mantle is a picture of me, one of my friends with their kids, like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this was, hey, I know
Yep,
everyone
that's
in that
me.
picture except for you. Yeah, I'm certain that the two of you certainly saw the troops that I performed in, certainly
Mhm.
saw the shows that I did. It's
Yeah.
very likely that you saw me. You
Yeah, no,
certainly saw my friends.
it's totally wild. Yeah, we were, I say the trunk shows in Epcot, but the World Showcase players, and we were very big citizens of Hollywood. And I mean, Citizens
Oh
Hollywood
yeah.
for me, I've worked with Gary Izzo for years and years and years up at the Sterling
Oh yeah.
Renaissance Festival. So a lot of, I think, as much as we can't talk about the theme park actor life, I don't think it's really it shouldn't be a surprise of how much impact starting in that early 90s period of how that impacted people like me, who I was playing baseball. I was in a drama club, but I didn't know I liked theater when I was in a drama club in elementary school. What did I know? But those kind of performances were different and reached audiences in different ways in a place that we loved. And I think that's often overlooked. It is overlooked of how much good those types of interactive performances really did, and how much a difference they made on audiences.
Yeah, I so agree with you. And now it's an actual thing. And that's how much of an impact it made. And maybe
Yeah.
it'll get a better rap in the future. Or maybe it does now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But now there's a whole world of immersive entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer a show writer. I'm a narrative designer,
Oh, I love
Oh,
it.
which is
nice.
accurate and
Yes.
true. But it was
Yeah.
accurate and true. I was doing that before I knew I was doing that.
Yeah.
In fact, next week I'm talking to a group of students, graduate students from BYU that are getting their degree in experience design.
Oh,
Oh.
So
nice.
literally what we did
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s
Yeah.
is now a graduate program
Yeah.
of
Crazy.
immersive entertainment. So everything is immersive. And that's really the basis of it, is bringing you into the story, bringing the audience into the story. And that's really what we did, with some props, minimal props, sometimes a little bit more. But it was really bringing you into the show, into the environment, into the experience. And that's certainly what the citizens did. I was at, do you remember the Canada show? Did you ever see the Canada show? With,
When I think about the World Showcase stuff, I always my brain kind of drifts like to that Canada UK
Yeah.
side. So I'm trying to think.
yes, me
Was
too.
it?
I was in
Yeah.
UK for a
Yeah.
long time, long
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I did some Italy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned
But
I know you mentioned Romeo and Juliet in the book, and so
yeah,
I remember that show especially. Yeah,
yeah,
but all
yes.
those shows, I went to UCF in the mid to late 90s. So when I worked in the parks, that was kind of, I was split in time, but I know what the vibe was upon people and how they felt about theme parks. I was like, what do you mean? I mean, it's a different theatrical experience. It's a different way to get what audiences are connecting to. And like you said, it pulls you into a story. So for me, watching all that theater, because I was playing catch up, I didn't get into theater until I was 18, really. So I felt like those performances at Disney and things like, I was a wrestling fan with a shared experience between audience and performers. Like those kind of things. I felt like I had some sort of like knowledge other people didn't have about
Yes.
how to read audiences and to lean into what they were doing on particular performances.
Mhm.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
It's so much about the audience energy. And there's kind of different philosophies about that. And I've worked with, you'll guess mine pretty easily, but I've certainly worked with people on all sides of it, from Universal to Disney. at the horror makeup show, which was audience interactive, but on a stage, right? Whereas being at Murder, She Wrote show was you were really going back and forth between the audience and the stage. And then to Epcot, which was you were on the street. You were in the audience was with you, and two kind of different philosophies. I have worked with people who were actor. One of my directors called them book actors versus audience actors. And a book actor is this is the script, this is the show. I'm going to go out and perform it. I'm going to go out and perform it with all of my energy. No, if the audience is 3 people, if the audience is 300 people, if the audience is 1,000 people, I'm going to do this show the way that I am supposed to do it. And there's certainly there's no disrespect there. There's no dishonor there. Yeah. But you can tell from, I don't know if you read my story with me and Mark Daniel doing the pre-show yet in the book. But I'm all about adjusting the energy. I'm going to perform a show for 2 people differently than I am going to perform for 300 people, that I'm going to perform for 1,000 people. It's going to be the same content, but it's going to be tailored to their energy. But the key for me is engaging their energy where they're at and then bringing it up a level. Yeah. I'm not going to get a group of 3 people up to 1,000 people energy, but I might get them up to 25. Even if the group doesn't go past 5 or 10 people, but because of the work that I'm doing on engaging their energy, I can raise it to a different level. But to come in, for me, it always felt like I was steamrolling them if I came in at
coming in too high.
It's 1,000% when there's 3 people and 2 of them are screaming babies.
And I think we would even pick up on that sometimes if we were watching Citizens of Hollywood. I mean, we would watch multiple sets sometimes in a day, in a trip that we were taking, and we would notice the difference in the crowds and who was reacting or interacting or playing along. And then other times where people were like, no, I don't want any part of this. Don't involve me in whatever this is. And they would have to kind of, make some changes and twists and turns. And I mean, I've seen that with Frank as well at the Renaissance Festival. You gotta work with who's in front of you and what you're doing. So that's
I did a holiday show in the Mexico Pavilion once, and the idea was that we bring little kids on and dress them up as the nativity characters and perform a posada, which is the parade. And this is a tradition in Mexico where they dress as nativity characters and parade through their neighborhood and knock on each door and ask if there's room at the end, completely adorable. Yeah. Well, for me, so, I had a hat for Mary and a shepherd's thing and 2-3 shepherds and 1 crown for, I had like 7 maybe. But if 20 kids wanted to be in it, 20 kids were in it. Here, you hold this leaf. You're like, what? I just have all these kids on the stage, and I wasn't not directed to do that, but I wasn't directed like, make sure you include every kid. But if every kid wants to be on stage at Disney World, you get to be on stage at Disney World.
That's right.
That's the game. I'm not picking 7 of you or 3 of you and saying the rest of you sit down.
Right. And that's the magic behind the theme parks and the immersion is that, you get to be part of the story and you get to be involved and play along. So, and it's because of what you're doing and that makes the experience for everyone.
Yeah.
When did it kind of like an extra light bulb went off maybe of like, oh, I'm really developing a certain thing for myself that's really unique to me in my storytelling and how I'm engaging and I see the system forming. How did that all when did those things start brewing for you?
Oh, that is such a great question. That is so cool. Nobody's ever asked me that, and I've never thought of it like that. There is an exact time. There is a real time that there was a shift there. I was at Epcot and I'm not going to remember when. Maybe it was 97, 98, somewhere around there. And the Pleasure Island had opened, and the so now there was the Adventurers Club and the Comedy Warehouse improv shows there, and they were using a lot of actors. And then the cruise lines opened somewhere around there, and so a bunch of actors went. And so our little World Showcase Players troupe dwindled down to like 3 people, and 2 of them were new. And I was working at Universal at the time, and I literally got a call from the casting director and said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" Which had literally never happened to me ever, and has never happened. But because I knew street theater and I knew the form of those trunk shows, and I knew how to tell the story and engage the audience, I knew exactly what he was asking for.
Right.
And so I came down, and they hired a bunch of new people, and a lot of the new people were great comedians, great actors, didn't understand. And I totally understood that, because when I first started with SAC Theater, I was like, what do you mean you pick people out of the audience and put them in the show? How do you know which one to pick? How do you know which one's the right one? Oh my God, I was terrified. And so I just watched these people that were great at it and figured it out. So then when it was my turn to be kind of the elder statesperson of the show, I was able to give them my ideas of like, okay, you're looking for this kind of person. You're looking for this kind of engagement. You're looking for this age group, really. You're looking for, this age group really doesn't care anymore. They are fine. But this age group, a 21-year-old guy, he's going to be real concerned about his image. And so you're going to have to work harder at that. So all of those kind of little tricks that I've learned along the way, I started sharing. And then somewhere right before the millennia, they were doing lots of new things for the millennia. And I was I got tapped to do some writing for some of the projects at WDI. And I started realizing, I really can learn. I can train actors to go from stage actors to being audience engagement, street theater actors, street actors at Disney. And there were a lot of people being hired. It was such an odd time where they would bring people to Epcot, because we also had kind of streetmosphere characters in Future World as well.
Yeah.
And so there was this, and the anatomical players, if you remember.
Oh yeah, Wonders of Life.
So there was a big troupe of actors, and we kind of would all wander around to each other, like if someone called in sick at UK, someone from anatomical would come over, and so we were all switching around all the time. So they brought in a lot of people that, like, they were looking at for singers. They were looking at to be in the Beauty and the Beast show. And they were like, well, we can put them in World Showcase for a little while until we're ready to move them over there. And so they'd get there, and they'd be these singers with these beautiful voices. And we'd be like, hey, get out on the street, and no microphone. And I don't know how to use my voice that way. I don't know how to engage people. And so I started writing training programs and started and asked to become the trainer, and created a program. So that was probably around 2000 or so. That was a long story.
No, it's a good stuff. I love it. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Two things. Your stories can never be long enough here, and we we love it.
We love it.
But yeah, there was so much going on at the time, and that difference for every actor, I felt it when I first started, of oh my gosh, I'm not on a big stage with a wig with everyone looking at me. I'm in among people, sometimes with a wig. Like, how do I be real?
Right.
Like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to still have high energy and be face to face with someone. I don't know how to project my voice when there's people 2 feet in front of me, but also people 20 feet away from me. I don't know how to do that. Right. And so learning how to do that, for me, it was watching people who were really genius at it, and then kind of offering that advice when it was
Yeah,
my
I mean,
turn.
I think that's another thing though that I think this kind of training and experience, whether we're calling it street theater, interactive theater, immersive theater, whatever, is that it teaches you really how to be resourceful. And I think again, it speaks to I'm gonna find my spot. What's needed, and like there's a lot of big picture thinking when you have this kind of training, to me. And so I know just in the jobs I had, it's like, what's needed here? What do they need me to do in situation?
Mhm.
And that's what speaks to me about that story there, is that, I think I can provide this and do it really well. I'm gonna find, carve my path. I'm gonna tell my story here in this situation.
Mhm. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was so cool that you can create that role for yourself too with everything you had then experienced until that point. That's
Yeah.
great that you kind of then pivoted and was able to go to the next step because sometimes, especially in the theme parks, and I'm only speaking as a third party because I wasn't an official cast member, I was just third party. But that over time, sometimes the trainings like they need some refreshments to them and revisions and they need to change based on the times we're in or the guests that are coming in or whatever it is. So that's very cool that you are able to see that and kind of solve that for them.
I think that's so true because the audience is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there, and that's what makes it different, where you can do the same content over and over again,
Yeah.
but every audience is different. Their needs are different, and what their background is and their experiences is different. Um, and so I'm sure that's even more challenging today. It started to get more challenging for me with the cell phones. Like, how do I need to
Mhm.
start incorporating those
Yeah.
instead of just being frustrated at them. I was frustrated at them at first. And
Yeah.
then there was certainly a period of time where it was like, well, put your cell phones away. Like now you would never do that. You can't do that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now you can in big theaters. I know there's a lot of acts, especially comedians who are,
Mhm.
kind of bagging the cell phones on the way in,
Oh
which I
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
admire because you're actually in the moment. But in street theater, in this interactive moment, you actually want to be creating moments that they can photograph, that they
Mhm.
can take a selfie of themselves in the experience, that they can do a little video on, because that's part of their interaction now.
Yeah.
Is them finding the perfect Instagram shot. That's interaction. And so
Yeah.
that we have to learn how to yes and that
Mhm.
in a new way.
Yes.
I now that I do I don't perform in that way, but I do a lot of speeches and a lot of keynotes, and that's always a part of it, is creating these moments for people, and creating these experiences, these connection points for people, so that they can have not only interactive moments in the room, but then they can turn it into something that is that they can put on their feed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy
Uh,
world.
it's great.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah, trying to grab focus and attention. It's hard. To the book, tell you, sorry, I love myself a good 3-act story as well. So I love that you have it broken down into 3 parts here of discover, develop, and deliver. I love it. I love just how it's broken out like that. Just when you get ready and sit down, and did you already have these 3? Is that with like your 3? Like I talk about trust, heart, and instinct a lot. Those are like my 3.
Mhm.
So so when I got excited right away, just in your table of contents, going, yeah, just got 3 things. I love it. So is this something that you had considered for a long time? Like, these are my 3 things, or when you sat down and read the book, to write the book, you were like, all right, how am I going to break this out, and how am I going to do the structure?
It's kind of a both and, but for the book itself, you're right. It was really about the structure of the book and sitting down to write that, because this is based off of my 8-hour workshop on storytelling. And I did them for nonprofits and for small businesses, because a lot of people, if you are a small business owner, you're running the business, you're doing the payroll, you're figuring out the marketing, and you're, running by Staples to pick up more paper, and you're doing all the things. And now you have to do not just marketing, but daily content.
Mhm.
And even if you are accessing some of the new tools like AI, you still, I mean, you can't have a robot
Right.
write all of your content. You have to now become the designer of that content. If you're going to have a robot write your content for you and hand it to you, you still have to look at it and know
Right.
what's good, what's not good, what engages. And so that's what I teach in my storytelling workshops. I teach you how to tell a good story, how to craft a good story, how to recognize a good story, how to accordion it from a tweet size to a TED Talk size. And so I teach all of that. So, but in the, because it's a workshop, because it's live people, we do a lot of the crafting before lunch, but then right after lunch, you know, people get sleepy, as you know. So that's right after lunch, I do the delivery part because it gets them up on their feet, it gets them using their voices, it gets them shaking their bodies. And then we sit down and we do more of the development part. So it's kind of backwards. I would never, it doesn't work really well in terms of the flow. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in that otherwise they'd fall asleep.
keep them going. Yeah.
After lunch. So when I sat down to craft the book, I was like, well, it doesn't really, you have to figure out what is the story that I'm going to tell. And that causes people so much panic. That blank page is so stressful. And figuring out which story, how do I find the right story? How do I find stories about my organization? And so figuring that out is the first thing. But then really learning how to develop those stories and make them excellent, make them good, and make them flexible. Because, you know, and this is certainly something I learned from street theater because, you know, about a 20, 25-minute show. But if you're in the Italian pavilion where there's no shade at 2:00 and that sun comes out and those people are like, and you've been at it for 10 minutes and they're like, and we're leaving because we're being, our arms are, we're actually frying sitting on this ground. So you got to figure out a way. You can't just stop the story and go, hey, the weather stinks, let's go. You have to, okay, I'm going to work with this weather. I'm going to work with these people. I'm going to make it a satisfying experience, but I am going to, I got to take big chunks out. So you have to learn how to, well, I always say it's accordion. You know, I can talk about this stuff for in a post in 240 characters, or I can talk about it for 3 days in a seminar. Either. So figuring that out, but then it seemed like really then the last thing you would do is deliver it. And so that was like, it took me a while to kind of pull it apart from the workshop that I do with people.
Right.
To putting it into a book. And actually, it makes perfect sense now to look at it. But when I was taking it apart, I was like,
I mean, first of all, everyone has to get the book and attend the workshops, do all the things. So I don't want to give too much away, but can you do a high level of how do you go about all of this? How do you, especially for a small business or even just a person and their own brand, how do you figure it all out?
Well, the kind of the heart of the book is what I call the story formula. And so I'm absolutely fine with sharing that because it's really, it takes some work to understand how to use the story formula. But the story formula is this, and you can apply this to every story that you tell, and you can apply it. This is how you're going to review the Chat GPT content. You're going to look at it through this lens of this formula. And the formula is this: every story to be engaging has to be universal so we relate, specific so we care. That's what lights the brain up. That's what causes the heart to engage. If a story has universal themes to it that anyone on the planet can relate to, then it touches the heartstrings of everyone. They start, have you ever heard a story and you've been like, oh my gosh, me too?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and then you go back and you go, no, what was it? That had nothing to do with me. That has literally never happened to me.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh yeah, me too. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just say real quick, there's this new Billy Joel song, and I think that it's about me. I do. And I'm like, I know he's just telling this story, but I think it's about me.
Well, and Billy Joel and the Grammys,
Mhm.
2024 Grammys.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they're the 2023 Grammys, but they happened in
Very
2024.
confusing. It's always confusing.
But that's a really good example. Billy Joel is a great example of universal and specific.
Mhm.
And from this year, the greatest example is Tracy Chapman.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
everyone.
So
I mean,
the chorus of Fast Car is the universal.
Mhm.
Made me feel like I could be someone.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the universal theme,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
then those verses are so specific
Yeah.
about where she was working and what, it's colored with all of these little details. And that's what makes your brain starts to paint the picture
Right.
Mhm.
of what it was like. If it was just about a song about, I've always wanted to be someone, I've always wanted to feel important, but I'm not sure that I am. It kind of gets floaty, and you're like, you kind of lose interest.
Yeah.
So I call that if a story stays too universal, I call that the Miss America story. Like, well, I want
Mhm.
world peace.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What does it
Listen.
sound like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it touch like? What is that? What are you doing tomorrow at 9 a.m. when you sit down at your desk? What does that mean? And so you've got to get that universal theme and understand that theme of what anybody is going through. And then you've got to find the specifics that make it interesting, the colors to it. Now, the trick is if it gets too specific, I call that boring uncle.
Mm.
The boring uncle at the Thanksgiving
Mhm.
dinner table who is like, yeah, well, and we had this car. No, wait, it was a truck. And no, okay, it was a Dodge Ram. No, wait, it was a Chevy. Like, oh my gosh, when is he going to get to the point,
Yeah.
right? Too many specifics. So it's finding that balance. And so the first exercise that I do this for myself when I've got a blank page. I ask everyone to do this. You get a piece of paper and you split it in half and you write universal on one side and specific on the other. And you
Mhm.
start thinking through the universal themes of whatever the story is that you want to tell.
Mhm.
So, for instance, I want to tell a story about me and my friend Mark Daniel going out into the Italy pavilion and doing a show at 11 o'clock in the morning. We get out there, we expect to have a crowd of people, and it's 2 people, 3 people.
Right.
Okay, what do we do? That's the story. So, what is the universal? How many people on the planet have gone out to Epcot to do a street theater show at 11 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
It's probably under 100 people, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Right? There's
Yeah.
not that many of us.
Yeah.
And
Right.
now there's even less. Because they're not doing it. Just
Right.
poor Sergio by himself juggling. Um, but- so there's less than 100 people. So you can't relate to that. But what can you relate to? You can relate to nerves about going out and offering something
Mhm.
and not sure if people will like it. You can relate to feeling like this is my job. I'm supposed to go out and do my job, and now I can't do my job, and I'm going to be in trouble with my
Mhm.
boss. You can relate to the sense of failure of I'm going to go out there and be great, and
Mhm.
it's not possible.
Yeah.
Everyone can relate to that. But then the specifics of me and my friend Mark Daniel and the Italy Pavilion at Epcot and the 3 people that have their map. So now you are starting to paint that picture in your own mind.
Mhm.
I'm not giving you all the details. I didn't tell you what color I was wearing.
Right.
I didn't tell you if the guy from the audience was wearing a hat or not, but you're starting to paint it. You're seeing a tourist family, you're seeing the map, You know what they look like. You know what they wear. You're picturing them. You're picturing us in our street theater. You're picturing the Italy Pavilion. I'm not doing any of that work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The audience is. And so it's true audience engagement. It's back to the same
Right.
thing,
Mhm.
is that when you leave a little space in your story, your audience will engage and their brains will start to do the work and will start to paint the picture. And that causes an engagement, a real bond between you and your audience.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
finding those two things, which is that's the work.
yeah. Yeah.
And when you put it out like that, because for me, I know, and 'cause I hear it a lot when I tell stories here at home, that I use a lot of exposition, and I'm like, how did that happen? How did I come to use too much exposition? Is it because I talk too fast because I'm a New Yorker, so I feel like I have to just start going until I get to the heart of the story? I'm like, I don't even know how it happens, but you really lay it out in the with the formula of just like the universal, just get to it. And that's, you use that exercise and like, yes, let's and just get right
Yes.
into get right into it, start doing it, and grab their attention, engage.
Yeah. It's so helpful to know your own, like I'm the same way. I will put in way too many specifics because
Mhm.
while I'm talking, I'm seeing the picture in my brain and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, what about that thing? That'll be important. And it's like, no, nope, not important. It's curating what those specifics are gonna be.
Yeah.
And so then sometimes I'll be telling a story and I'll catch myself and be like, I'm boring them. There's too many specifics. So then I'll be like, so then everything was good. It was just a super special blessing to all of us.
And it
I'm
all
like,
worked
well,
out in the end. So.
great. It was so great. We're just blessed. Oh my
Yeah.
God. What does that actually mean? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So, so then I can pull back way too far into too
Yeah.
universal. So it's finding that you're always finding that balance.
Yeah. And it's just reworking it along the way. Going back to earlier, it's what is your audience? Who is your audience? What platform are you using? What are you in public? Are you not? It's the same thing with the microphone versus your own voice, in a live performance. And
Mhm.
it's similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To because you mentioned taking it to a TED Talk, or we TikTok, we Insta, but we like to keep things in our bubble. So one of the fascinating aspects to me about your book is really seeing storytelling into these other media. Like, we know we have to do it. We're like, but what if we spend a lot of time on it and writing the story, and then or telling the story, and then it doesn't get any engagement? So to those who are trying to tell their stories in
Mm,
these various the reels, the TikToks,
yeah.
the threads. I don't think people are doing that, but nevertheless, what,
We
what
tried. We
yeah,
tried a
Right.
little
is
bit.
it
Right.
is it just really like just stick? It's the formula, right? You just drop it in the same way. Because I love the reference you make in the book about Stephen King tweet, and you then reference his book, and almost them being exactly similar. Of like, you got the punch, you got the reveal, you got the. I just love how that's set up. So then taking it out into these other forms. Um, is it more challenging to talk about the formula outside of the familiar, I guess?
Well, I think I think the formula can help you break it down. That each
Mhm,
of the new formats is scary in its own way.
Mhm.
But I think you're right. It's when we put on, I need to get this much engagement or it didn't have
mhm.
value.
Right.
Mhm.
That is the part. I think that's the pressure part.
Mhm,
I think when you do, if if TikTok is a format that feels good to you, I think you should not
mhm,
feel pressured to do all of the formats. I mean, if you're a small
Yeah.
business.
mhm,
Now,
mhm.
and now if you're a communications business like this, like
Right,
you're trying
right,
to communicate, then
right.
you're going to try it. Is our audience on LinkedIn? Is our audience, I would bet your audience is more on TikTok and Insta than anywhere.
Right, yeah, right.
But like, where is my audience? Do they like a blog? Do they like a podcast? What do they
Mhm,
like? And but then you also have to factor in, what do you like?
yeah.
What do
Mhm.
you like to do? What's fun for you?
Yeah.
What expresses your voice really, really well? And so that's a big part of the engagement as well. I never did citizens. I didn't do great at Streetmosphere. That was not a good fit for me. I needed the structure of a story. I love being part of the structure of a story. So holiday storytellers, I did 3 different holiday storytellers. The World Showcase players, the Canada, where there was a story and then there was improvisation in it. But just being a character out on the street and interacting, I got lost. I would just get terrified and be like, I don't know what to do. I need a beginning, middle, and end. And doing straight improv. Like I could have done the Adventures Club. That was of interest to me, but doing straight improv at the Comedy Warehouse, no, not my thing, not my format. Doesn't mean it's not a good format to try. I took improv classes and things like that, but it wasn't something that I wanted to pursue. So I'd say that's the same of all these different formats. You know, you try the TikTok, and if that format feels right for your brand, for the message you want to get out, then really think about, you know, there's nothing worse than and this happens in the corporate world all the time, where, you know, these poor marketing directors, because I talk to marketing people all the time. Yeah, my boss just told me I have to make a video that goes viral. Well,
super easy, no problem.
That's fine. It's easy.
Yeah, and the things that go viral are like, what?
Ridiculous.
You know, Bohn just said, how's everybody doing? That's it. And the world went insane. That's it. It was totally within Elmo's brand, totally within his personality, totally within his story. And that's why it resonated with people.
Right.
That's why it resonated.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Elmo just asked how we doing. And yeah, it's true. Everyone went crazy. Colbert was talking about it. It was a whole thing. Yeah.
But if Colbert had asked, how's everybody doing? Wouldn't have gotten the same kind of response. Because he's not the same person, not the same person to us. He doesn't mean what Elmo means to us. So know yourself as well as knowing your audience. And then think about, when you think about the things that have gone viral that do hit, they do have a universal to them, and they do have specifics to them. And most often it's the specifics that are interesting to the person creating the content, right? They're interested in, they're doing their thing. And it's just engaging. It's engaging because of that, because they fully committed to that. So that's what I'd say about the TikToks and about the Insta posts and all of that. That find the medium that suits you best, and then really get in there and use the story formula, use storytelling techniques. It probably has a beginning, middle, and end. The ones that are hitting, right? There's a lot of different. It probably shows. It doesn't tell, right? It's using all of those techniques, and so when you can then, consistency is also a big part of it. In 8 shows a day, some of them are gonna be okay. Some of them might even tank. But guess what? At 1 o'clock, we're going back out, right? And then we're going back out at 2:15, and then we're going to do it at 8 o'clock, and that's how this is going to go. And we're just going to keep going, and it'll be the sum of the day. And so that's a big part of it too, is just to keep telling your story, keep trying it out, keep trying it in a medium that's fun for you, in a way that telling your story is fun for you. And doing it consistently, and that'll build that muscle too in you. It's like you'll feel it. Oh, this one's really great. But then also think about the value. It's this is absolutely going back to where we started, where we said, theme park actors, it's not, but what an impact it had on you. What an impact it had on me. What an impact some of the children's faces and some of the parents and I remember people and their names, from 1992. Like, I remember those people that were in my show.
Yeah.
And I remember those experiences, and there's plenty of people that remember those experiences with me and with my cast members and my other actors. And so if the 3 people you're engaging, the 30 people you're engaging, the 1,000 people, I think you got, are engaging, are enjoying you,
Yeah.
that has value.
Yeah. And yeah, it's so true. And it's something, we'll get into conversations with people sometimes about content and how crazy the world is with social media and all of it. And some people feel like we're doing so much and we're out on all the things, but then we'll see other people and we're like, they're doing all the things. Look at that, and it's always, you're comparing here and there, but I'll always tell people like, well, yeah, kind of try them all out. And because you never know where your audience is. And there are platforms we're on that have a few hundred. And it's like, okay, but I'll still kind of test it out here and there and see what happens. But yeah, you have to find your people. We're very big on community and feeling like we found our community within this podcast and the people we've met from it. And I think that's huge too, is when you can find real friendships or real support or just your people that you can share your stories with or relate to or and just build on that. I think that's so cool. So that's awesome. But as you're talking about remembering people from 1992, which I don't know if you know, it's like one of me and Frank's favorite years. We always say 1992 and before, like that's a great time at Disney.
That's the threshold. Love it.
Do you have one specific memory? I'm sure you have many, but of, your favorite experience while working in the parks, or a favorite memory or a magical moment that you felt while you were there?
Oh my gosh, there's truly so many.
Yeah.
So I'll share one with you. That's kind of silly. And then if you need a sweet emotional one, we can go there too. But,
If we need to cry, we'll let you know. Yeah.
So when we were in the UK Pavilion, and so this would be in the 90s, definitely. I think sometime after 93. And we would be out in the summer, of course, doing our shows, and our shows would be 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 1:30 and the 2:30 were pretty hot. They were pretty warm, but is what I mean by that. Blazingly hot, no shade. The audience would all come in and sit on the curb in the shade. And so then we'd end up having our back to where the crowds were coming. And so it was really hard to draw an audience. It was really hard work to get them to come and to get them to commit, because it was like, I don't think I can stand here and sweat for whatever is going to happen. Don't know that I can do that. So for a period of several months, really, a young woman would come and she would bring her little boy, and her little boy was named Timmy. And she obviously had an annual pass, or she was a cast member. And this was clearly something she had some sort of pass. So this was ending up like, hey, this is a free, good, fun thing to do for me and my kids.
Yeah.
So we can go do this at 2:00 in the afternoon, and then grandma will take him and I'll do my shift at night. It was clearly a way that she was engaging him and giving them something to do. So Timmy and his mom would come by, and Timmy loved our shows, which is like 3 years old wasn't really our target audience, but he loved our shows. And in one of our shows, King Arthur and the Holy Grail, we would teach the audience to do different things. We would teach them to do a Grail salute, and we would teach them a knight salute. And then we would teach them that whenever we asked, what do you think of the show so far? The audience was supposed to yell back, rubbish. It's an old British theatrical tradition. Well, Timmy was so adorable, and he had this little lisp, and he would say, rubbish. So at some point during the summer, I started doing the pre-show. Is when it was a troupe of 3 people, and the pre-show starts. One person does the pre-show, warms up the audience that is there, while the other 2 go out and tell people, "Come see the show, come see the show." And then the show starts when the pre-show person gets the audience to clap, and the other 2 people run in, and it draws more people in.
Yeah.
But then the story starts. So during the pre-show, I would instead of doing my job, I would get Timmy to come on stage with me on my little stage in the street. And then I would teach him all of the little things we were going to do, and he would teach the audience. And so they'd get to hear his adorable little lisp and see this adorable little 3-year-old waving his arms, doing all this cute stuff. And all of these people would come by and be like, "Oh my gosh, this show is going to be so great." And I was totally minding this kid. But he was so completely adorable, and he so wanted to be there. And it just made the whole thing so engaging and so delightful. And really this was a time thing. This was a limited time thing. Probably the next summer he wasn't going to be that into it. But a lot of my cast members and I have a special fond memory of Timmy and Bubbish.
Have we found Timmy to this day? I think people do that now with all the TikToks and the things, and they find people.
Yes,
we need to
I'm
find
sure
Timmy.
He's in his 30s. I'm sure it's disturbing. I'm sure he has it's possible he has a 3-year-old.
Right.
Oh goodness.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Just because I wasn't prepared to do this, but do you have a favorite ride in any of the parks? It can be Disney or Universal. Is there something that you're drawn to? Maybe because of the story it tells, maybe not.
I haven't ridden rides in so long. But I did when I was a merchandise hostess in Tomorrowland. I wanted to ride Space Mountain every single day. I mean, but that's the old school, that cue of the future that was so from 1960s. I just loved that. I absolutely loved that. Loved being in that and that story. And I haven't ridden a ride in a long time. I loved once the Toy Story ride that you could actually play a game. That one I love too. That came out more recently, but I have to kind of go and check out. Now that things are going to be updated over at Tiana, I'm looking forward to seeing that and seeing that storyline. But for me, the absolute favorite thing for me at Disney has always, will probably always be is the Electric Light Parade. It is just.
Yep.
I could watch it all day long. You can't because it's the Electric Light Parade. But after every shift as a merchandise host, I would go and watch it and just stand there on my way out. As an adult, I make sure that I'm there. I was at a traditions event where I was a traditions host, which is the person that teaches the onboarding. And we were all celebrating our year, and we were in the Magic Kingdom, and Electric Light Parade came on, and we all ran out to the street to see it. We left our banquet hall, ran out to the street to see it, and I was kind of standing under a street light. And the Electric Light Parade was going by, and there are all these people, all these guests, and I'm under the street light, a little bit further back. And the float comes by, and Mickey's, I'm going to cry, Mickey's has all his lit up thing, and he pointed. He pointed at me. And I was like, he's pointing to somebody else because his crowd's so huge. And I kind of gestured to myself, and I was like, me? And he nodded his head and gave me the thumbs up. I was like, you. And I'm like, and here I was in my mid-40s, a traditions host, a person that's training other people. I've been at Disney now since I was 16, off and on, and still Mickey singling me out, engaging me. it just, it absolutely did me in.
Yeah. The
Especially
Disney
Electric Light
magic.
Parade.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's magic. It's
Yeah.
magic. Being
Yeah.
involved in the story, being invited to be involved in the story is magic.
Yeah, we went to Not So Scary for the first time in the fall, and we hadn't seen a parade in a while. I think even up like we were at the hub, so I mean not the hub, up
Mhm.
by the train station, but even just for a moment, you would get like eye contact from a performer, and it like flashed me back to like, oh, I
Mhm.
remember when the performers looked at me when I was a kid, and it was like the same feeling. I was like, whoa, that is
Mhm.
timeless right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. It's being invited, and that's what I teach brands too, is that invitation to be in your story.
Yeah.
So that applies too to what we were talking about social media. That invitation for people to be part of your story,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
powerful. It's powerful because people want to be part of that story, and it's that universal thing. It's that whatever you're going through, I'm not going through the same specifics, but I'm going through the same thematic,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so if you can reach me there and invite me to be part of the story, you're going to win every time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more curveball question here, just because I feel like we're kindred spirits, all three of us, because we've had the pop culture references sprinkled throughout. Is there a story out there in the world right now that wherever it may be, in any form, whether it's a TV, movie, real life, celebrities, politicians, whatever, is there a
TikTok.
story on TikTokers, that someone just like you're watching and you see their story shaping like for everybody to see, but you see it a little bit deeper. I don't know if I framed the
Mm,
question the correct way, so I'm going to stall while you think about
gosh,
it.
yes, you're going to have to tap dance a lot. Well, and that's kind of a curse about the story formula, because
Mhm.
now that I've given it to you, you're going to see it all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
everywhere. It's going to destroy your life.
Yeah.
But
Real
yeah, I
class.
mean, Tracy Chapman at the Grammys was a
Yeah,
really
big,
great
yeah.
example of it for me,
Yeah.
because the depths of that, of seeing her, this person who had kept away from everything,
Yeah.
and seeing her step into her moment and step into it so beautifully,
Mhm.
without nerves. Her voice sounded so perfect,
Mhm.
so gorgeous. It was so emotional. And it took me right back to 1988 when
Yeah.
I was in summer stock in Sharon, Connecticut, and driving around
Yeah.
in the hills and the mountains there. That it's so hilly and beautiful there. And we just put her album on, and just that, it brought me back there. But then seeing her tell that story, seeing her tell that with this young singer that is revering her, but he's adding
Mhm.
his own story to it, was just incredible. And then the
Yeah.
theme of the song of I want to be someone,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and diving into all those specifics in the verses that bring it to life so much. It's People feel the same way today.
Yeah.
And it just connected so deeply. So it moved me on every single level. But I mean, I had a similar experience watching the Barbie movie. I mean, the layers in that
Yeah.
movie,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I'm like laughing my head off in the first 5 minutes. And this woman comes up to me after. She's like, "It was so great. You were just enjoying it so much. It gave everybody else permission to laugh." I'm like, why wasn't everybody? This is
Right.
hysterical. But yeah, there's nothing I watch that I don't see the layers.
Yeah.
No, and I know I mentioned Billy Joel earlier, but
Yeah,
the Grammys
that's all.
they had a number of stories to tell. Like Joni Mitchell was phenomenal at the Grammys. Oh
Incredible.
my God, it was
Yeah.
crazy. Just
Yeah.
like
And that same thing of seeing seeing her with Brandy Carlisle, and then
Oh
those
yeah.
two really young women that were playing the strings that were
Mhm.
so engaged.
Yes.
That was, again, there are just so many stories
Yeah.
going on, and Annie Lennox was clearly
Oh,
having multiple
oh
stories
my
going
gosh.
on.
Annie Lennox was
Um,
phenomenal. I love Annie
and the
Lennox.
two
So.
gals from Prince were backing her up, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it
Oh yeah,
was
Wendy
like,
and Lisa. Yeah.
yes, it was just like layers and
Yeah.
layers and layers. And yeah, I really do want, I've got to listen a little bit more to Billy Joel's song, because he has that gift of universal
Oh,
and
yeah.
specific.
Mhm.
I mean, when you think about, some of his songs, the Italian Restaurant, like,
Oh,
Mhm.
like it's so specific that you
yeah.
think nobody's going to relate to this, but man, you start singing that song and everybody's going to sing along.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
And the Piano Man, I mean, that was his life. He was talking about his specific experience, but we all feel like we're the Piano Man,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we all know what that's like to be in a
Mm.
job that's a grind, and yet we have something special to offer in it,
Yeah.
and yet it's a grind, and
Yeah.
yet nobody's appreciating us. But then somebody, that time, that one person appreciated us. We know what that
Mhm.
feels like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now that we're talking about music and stuff, now I'm like, but I think I want to know like her favorite TV shows. Like what? Because I feel like especially in the last, I don't know how many years, and with streaming, there's a uniqueness happening with like the scripts and the stories that are out there in TV right now. So do you have favorite shows that you really just feel like the storytelling is so well done?
Gosh, there's so many. And what's so crazy now is that you can watch it all in once.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
You're like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
I am gonna watch 7 episodes
Yeah.
today. I'm a big fan of The Diplomat on
Mm.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Netflix. I love that storytelling. The shape of each episode is so strong.
Mhm.
That 3-act arc,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
tightness of it is so good. And then the shape of the entire series, that really I love that, when
Mhm.
an episode can be its own complete story, but then when it builds into something,
Right.
I really love that. So I was a huge fan of The Americans as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I watched that a lot. Um, and I watched Battlestar Galactica. Now that's going a little bit back, but I mean, that's another one that I bought and would watch.
Right.
I could watch the whole series of that. And then while that was big, Edward James Olmos came, and he was a narrator at Candlelight, and I saw him backstage.
Oh. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was so excited. um, but that kind of storytelling, again, that anything layered like that, and like
Mhm.
a fun one that I just found was the Julia, about Julia Child, that's on Max, on HBO
Oh.
Max,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
David Hyde Pierce plays her husband.
Right.
It's so delightful and so funny and so complex. The relationships are really complex. Phoebe Neuwirth is in it, and she's just gorgeous.
Mhm.
And again, each episode kind of builds on each other, so that the season has one story that it's telling in different chapters, but each chapter is fulfilling. And I think that's man, when you can do that right, that's what I'm trying to do in my work,
Yeah.
doing theme park stories, is I'm trying to tell one story in multiple little satisfying chapters. That's the
Yeah.
real challenge.
Yeah.
We've been telling Jen to watch The Diplomat for months now, so it's not.
Yeah.
Oh
I know. I
gosh,
need to get
I
on
need
that.
to
Feel.
watch
Yes.
that.
Uh,
Oh my God,
well,
Rufus Sewell. I love him so
oh,
much.
mhm.
And
He's great.
oh,
Yeah.
and just love her. Now I'm not going to
Yeah.
remember her name.
Carrie Russell.
Carrie Russell, yes,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I mean, the Americans into the Diplomat. Oof, no, you
Yeah,
gotta watch
I mean,
it. But
Yeah. Pretty. I mean, if most people are, I don't think are already, but when you pull back and look at the scope of her work, and you go, oh,
Mhm.
wow,
yeah,
really
she's no
something.
joke.
You know,
Mhm.
100%. Well, Alice, I knew we would go over the hour. I'm not gonna lie, but this is what we love is because there's so much of what has happened in the theme parks over the years that has connected to us. But now you've put it in this form, and you the resourcefulness, like I mentioned, it gave you this ability to brands, to companies, to organizations, whatever it is. Like the fact that it starts at the theme parks, and that's those are the stories I love. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So I really can't thank you enough for talking to us for a little while here, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to plug all your things and all the places wherever we can find you.
Yeah.
Give you that space.
Awesome. Yes. Well, the book is called Tell Your Story by Alice Fairfax. And you can find that wherever you get books, barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. You can find it from my publisher, morganjamespublishing.com, or you can find it on my website, alicefairfax.com. And I'm mostly these days on LinkedIn. I'm a bit on Instagram. I'm kind of finding, to our point, I'm finding my new personality there. A lot of my expression there was about me and my son, and my story with him, and my story with Broadway, that I was supporting Broadway shows for the 7 years before the pandemic. And so now all of those things have changed. My son is 28. He could not care less about being involved in this story. And I'm not with the Broadway industry. I'm still a consumer of it, but I don't work in the Broadway industry anymore. So I'm kind of finding my story on Instagram these days, but LinkedIn makes sense for the work that I'm doing with Tell Your Story, the book, for nonprofits, for business leaders, for executives, because it really is about your ability to tell your story. And that's such a passion of mine. I want everyone to be able to communicate their story in a way that engages other people, because everyone has a story to tell, and you need to tell your story now. You need to.
Now is the time. It's we prefer the second Carousel of Progress song for Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow. So that's
I prefer If You Had Wings. If you had wings,
yes.
if you had wings.
We are.
But yeah, you can find me at Alice Fairfax on Instagram or LinkedIn. Those are my places.
Awesome.
Alice, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us on Theme Park Thursday. Really appreciate it.
This was such a delight. It was so great to meet you both.
The Dillo's Diz podcast is hosted by Frank Cardillo and Jen Cardillo-Snyder. Music produced by Matt Harvey. Logos and video production courtesy of Snidillo Studios. Dillo's Diz Resort is our Patreon, with tiers starting as low as $1 per month. You can visit dillosdizresort.com to learn more. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, X Twitter, and Facebook at Dillo's Diz. Check us out on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/DillosDiz. Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're there. We also have merch available on TeePublic and Etsy. For all this and more, visit our one-stop shop, dillosdiz.com. Dillo's Diz Podcast 2024.